Something I'd learned at age 14. When your mind is working, don't give it a reason to stop. I'd reasoned it out this far, fitting pieces into place. Why should I be stopped by one minor impediment? When you welcome thoughts, they come. There had been something wrong about the sound of the crunching from the monster that was eating. At first I was certain it was chowing down on the remains of one of my comrades, but now I realized the sound was all wrong. Too high, too sharp. And when I saw the color code on the exit door, bright red, I acted on my hunch. I didn't want to run into any more of those monsters, so I took it nice and easy, getting back to the one having its happy meal. With that troop trooping around somewhere, silence was definitely golden. My main concern was that he might be gone. I needn't have worried. Now I know why God invented bayonets. The thing died gurgling without a scream, a roar, or a gunshot to call monsters from the vasty deep. I missed my chance to find out if I had another intellectual demon. Flipping it on its back, I saw something red in its mouth. A clear, red, plastic computer keycard on which it had been chewing. Next to it was a pile of plastic cards, mangled beyond repair. Small red and blue globs suggesting the remains of more key cards. Fortunately, the one I carefully fished out of its mouth was still in one piece. The red card worked. The exit door slid open, revealing an access ladder. I climbed down as quickly as I could, but I still hadn't found a new shotgun. The Toxin Refinery. Such a lovely name. The dump was another step down in more ways than one. At first it seemed as though I'd entered a zone of peace and tranquility. Greeting me was a wide-open space lit by a sun lamp so bright that for a moment I thought I was back on Earth in the middle of a pleasant afternoon. The abundance of weird-looking machinery raised my suspicions. However, I could easily imagine monsters and zombies lurking behind equipment of that size. As I began to explore the area, I was grateful for the first sight of a barrel full of toxic sludge. I'd certainly changed my mind about green slime. Now that I knew the stuff was as explosive as nitro, finding it was like coming across another weapon. I searched frantically for another mark by Arlene. I remembered another afternoon we spent at the Rec Hall Flicks. We watched one of those mad scientist movies, and the laboratory was stuffed with more switches and levers than humanly possible. The more I checked out the Toxin Refinery, the more it seemed like that make-believe lab. Not all the switches had to be activated by hand either. I made that discovery when I walked past a green section of wall, the color of a ripe avocado. The immediate whirring sound had me spinning around and ready for action. But nothing was coming to get me this time. The motion detector I had just activated stimulated my memory. CNET used to show us training videos, and I remembered that Union Aerospace used movable architecture to transport the liquid metals extracted from Phobos ore. I watched the corridor behind me slowly shift out of sight. It sure beat the hell out of coming into a room and finding stone and metal that had grown scales or pulsing veins. No horror faces here. The bad part was that as the physical layout changed, the corridors would realign. The route in was no longer the route out. With so many hidden triggers, I never knew when I was going to shift everything all over again. Stepping on a landmine would be a lot worse, but this situation was still unpredictable enough to be a major pain in the ass. I tried avoiding the sensor eyes, but they were too well hidden. Once a motion detector activated, I couldn't undo it. I had to love it or lump it. When I tossed out the old religious baggage, I thought my superstitions had gone with it. Well, Phobos might not drag me back where the nuns wanted me, but it did reintroduce me to every superstition I ever had as a kid. So the first thought that leapt to my mind when something cold brushed by my face was ghosts. Peripheral vision warned me something was definitely there. But when I turned to face it, all I saw was a blur. I was still debating when something big and fast knocked me on my ass. I still couldn't see it, but I figured any ghost that can knock you down is a ghost you can return the favor to. Jesus and Mary, did I miss that shotgun now? The wide blast dispersion was tailor-made for shooting something you can't see. But if the rifle was all I had, the rifle was what I'd use. I was a Marine, damn it, and every Marine is a rifleman first. Scrambling back from where I'd been attacked, I readied my sig cal, aimed at nothing in particular, and waited for the first blurring of vision that meant either I was having a stroke or I'd found a new kind of monster. The wall in front of me went a little watery, like something insubstantial was in front of it. Without staring and losing it, I fired 4 quick taps. I expected to draw blood. I didn't expect an explosion. The ghost screamed and seemed to collapse. I wasn't sure. Then something hot and heavy pounded me from behind, and I finally tigged what had really happened. More damned fireballers. The first shot had missed me and killed my ghost. I whirled around, diving sideways. 2 spikies, 2 zombies, 1 big barrel of sludge. Ignoring the monsters, I concentrated fire on the stationary barrel. It took a couple of rounds, then exploded spectacularly. I wondered if my intellectual demon could spell kaboom. I approached cautiously and examined the remains. At least the alien's blood was red, and the internal organs bore a strong resemblance to human plumbing. Just beyond the primary gore side, I noticed another tangle of human arms and legs. Catching my breath, I went closer. It was a relief when I saw the bits and pieces were from zombies. For a moment, I'd been worried. It was Christmas when I saw the riot gun clutched in one of the severed hand. But it was Valentine's Day, hearts and flowers, when I spotted the missing rocket launcher. The shotgun was a little fancier than the last riot gun, a more old-fashioned model. It took the same 12 gauge, but it also had a muzzle device so you could adjust the pattern spread for close work or far. I allowed myself to feel real gratitude for the zombies, who were turning out to be my best pals. If not for them, I wouldn't have a single functional weapon. Even when the aliens deliberately destroyed radios, maps, and anything else decorative or useful, they had to keep their zombies armed. We don't come equipped with claws or armor plate, at least not we guys. Looking around, I was disappointed there was no one else to shoot. Then, as if receiving a good grade for a job well done, I spotted the glimmer of another AS on a distant wall. I ran to look. It was. Arlene had come through again. Once again the arrow showed me where to go, and I wasn't complaining. It seemed like she had an uncanny knack for shadowing the demons until she found the way down. Clipping the rocket launcher to my webbing gave me an odd feeling. I had thought to use it to frag myself, but Arlene and her magic markers changed that plan. The rocket launcher was serious firepower. This one looked in good shape, but it didn't have the 2 preloaded rockets that were standard issue. I was going to have to make my 1 rocket round count. I loaded it up, then let it dangle. Armed for very big bear, I followed Arlene's arrow through a narrow opening. I could barely squeeze past. The UAC designers evidently did not have big men wearing combat armor in mind when they built the manual vertilift bypass route. The doorway led to a spiral escalator down. It was not operating, so I crept down as silently as possible, but not very. The escalator led down to the command control level, as I recalled from the map I had seen above. CNC was the nerve center. If there were any working radios in the facility, that's where I expected to find them. Once there, I wondered if it had been worth the trip. The architecture of this place was the most depressing yet. Heavy gray, very much in the style of military garrisons from World War II. I had to wonder why any human would build thick, fortified walls deep inside Phobos, if a human had. Maybe we inherited this, too. Making my way down the longest corridors I had seen yet, I was struck by the grotesque combination of black moments from human history with the inhuman qualities of the invader. A heavy whiff of diesel fumes had me coughing so badly I had to stop and catch my breath. Diesel fumes? That couldn't be right. But that's what I had smelled. My footsteps echoed so loudly they sounded like mortars. I was glad when I reached the first open space, if only because the echoes wouldn't be deafening. The kind of stone forming the floor changed, and the higher ceiling gave the sound somewhere to go. I was at the edge of a huge room, shrouded in darkness except for a couple of shafts of bright light shining through glass skylights. I don't know whether there were spots behind the glass or whether I was seeing actual daylight, but the squares of brilliance lit up 2 spots as bright as freeway construction sites. One of the 2 bright-lit squares contained a table. On top of the table was an AB-10 machine pistol. God, did I want that pistol. I could almost taste it. I stared from the doorway, trying to estimate the odds that the pistol was bait for a trap. I kept getting an unacceptably high probability. Turning in the opposite direction, I crept along the wall, rolling each step just as they'd taught us in SEER school and Serve Infill. Every few steps I stopped abruptly, listening for someone shadowing my footsteps. I tracked the wall to the left, followed it for a right turn, and finally approached a hulking machine of some sort that almost touched the wall, leaving a slight gap. I slid through the gap as silently as I could and poked my head out. What I saw made me smile grimly. Behind a pile of boxes, 10 feet past the machine pistol, were no fewer than a dozen of those brown spinies who would never make Smokey the Bear's Christmas list. They were hiding behind the boxes, staring greedily at the well-lit gun and waiting for someone stupid enough to march up and try to grab it. Allow me to introduce myself. I let my new shotgun dangle, shouldering the mini rocket launcher instead. I only had 1 round, and I had never fired one of these things before. My first shot would have to be a damned good one. I closed my eyes and visualized the UAC Cells video. Raise rangefinder, grab plastic propellant tag and pull, which mixes the volatiles and incidentally engages the primer firing pin. Thumb off safety, aim and squeeze trigger. Pulling the trigger halfway produced a tiny red laser dot. I lovingly moved it across to set directly on the rump of the biggest demon. One of the other demons noticed the spot and reached out to touch it. I squeezed the trigger the rest of the way. The rocket exploded with a bang so loud I thought I would be permanently deaf. While my ears still rang, I dropped the rocket launcher and retrieved my scattergun. I humped toward the remains of the ambush crew. There were a few survivors, crawling along the ground looking for their legs and arms. I put them out of my misery. I counted 13 heads and 14 left arms, so I must have slipped a digit somewhere. Shotgun in hand, I slowly approached the AB-10, alert for a second line of attack. I was still 7 meters away when I heard the sound, and it was a bad one. The worst one yet. A low, pig-like growl. A snuffling sound turning into a wet, animalistic grunt. I froze, the image of a giant boar filling my mind. Slowly, I backed away from the AB-10. I did not want to meet whatever made that noise.